sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Shit's getting crazy out there, guys. Now, since Biden's speech in Pennsylvania, we have seen violence done upon the political rival. The Democrats since Jan 6th have beat into our heads that MAGA Republicans are the radicalists within our country and that Donald Trump is the leader of this radical movement. But recent events have shown it might be the other way around, and on top of civil unrest, we also have threats of a war in Europe and the Pacific theater, and might be, a chance of a nuclear strike. Shit's getting scary. It is. I don't know how I feel about it, but it's definitely giving me a little bit of anxiety, No, and I don't think America is ready for what might be coming. We are so polarized as a country right now that the idea of banding together to fight a common enemy is grotesque. At the beginning of this episode, I had a bit about signs of a collapsing society, and jokes aside, my hypothesis of signs of a collapsing society is a split culture. The fall of the Western Roman Empire, in my opinion, was because traditional Roman values were clashing with Christianity, and Emperor Constantine's decision to marry church and state did not help. Instead of letting a religion organically convert followers and slowly change values in society, Constantine forced Christianity upon the people of the Roman Empire. The values that helped set a solid foundation of morals and nationalism were rapidly being replaced with Christianity. Now, there's nothing wrong with Christian values, but when you force something upon someone, they tend to resist and rebel. Rapid change demoralizes people. And then a demoralized society leads to a weak army and breeds crime and corruption, which leads to more demoralization. And on top of that, add in an existential threat like the Huns of the barbarian tribes, and poof, gone. 2 civil wars would break out after the fall of the Western Roman Empire because of the polarized culture. You had one side of society that wanted to go back to traditional values, and you had the followers of the religious state. With hyperpolarization and constant unrest, add in another existential threat like the Ottomans, poof, gone. We are doomed to repeat history if we don't learn from it. And just like the great civilizations of the past, they too would see intensely polarized cultures. But when your nation is so big, how do you fix a split culture? And that's probably the question we need to figure out in order to fix our problem. So let's talk about civil war. In my opinion, the likelihood of civil war is rising. But, hey, what do I know? According to the comedic genius Bill Burr, the left's-right divide is not real. It just doesn't exist. That's my Bill Burr voice there. It's fucking wrong. But anyways, let's give a watch on Bill Burr's take on the left-right divide.
That people are more divided than ever, that we've got this kind of left-right divide, and the left looks at the right and the right looks at the left, and no one seems to really trust each other anymore?
No, I just don't think any of that's real. It's not real. It's just like, and the people from England and around, you guys always ask these questions, like, what's it like? Everybody yelling at each other and walking around with a machine gun. And it's just like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to think of the stereotype of where you guys come from. It's just not this, it's kind of, you are what they show. Mm. And what everybody shows now is heightened emotions because there's so many places to look at things. Like crazy gets people to stop and watch. But like actual, people just chilling out, no one wants to see that. They want to see like fighting and that type of thing. So
I know what you're saying, but we've been talking to people
Hey, you've been here for a week. You got it down, man.
Christ, dude. Fucking
Please,
asshole.
by all means, tell me about my country.
Fucking asshole, dude. What a fucking asshole. He comes off a little pompous, huh? Fuck. No, I like Bill Burr, but I had no idea how naive he is. But it makes sense, given where he has lived. Bill Burr grew up in Massachusetts, a Democratic stronghold. No, he is a successful New York comic who now lives in the luxurious hills of Los Feliz, California, which both those two states are Democratic safe havens. So my assumption here is that he believes that the left-right divide does not exist because he's always lived in areas where his political views have never been challenged. And I will tell you that this left-right divide most certainly exists in Oregon, exists in Washington, it exists in Florida, Texas, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Now, it's there. Maybe not so much in Florida anymore, but it's there, trust me. But if you live in an area where it is not present, then you will only see it if you are paying attention. Political factions have been clashing, and people have died as a result. We lack the inabilities to see the bigger picture because we can only go off of what is happening immediately in our lives. Most of us will not see the bigger picture until it is so far away it cannot be redrawn. And you're probably saying, calm down. What do you know? Yeah, what do I know, huh? I'm probably just a conspiracy head who's overthinking things. Or maybe you've just forgotten what has happened in 2020 during the Summer of Love. The Guardian writes, at least 25 Americans were killed during protests and political unrest in 2020. Black Lives Matter protester shoots SUV driver in Provo, Utah. A Black Lives Matter protester turned violent in Utah Monday evening when a masked man shot an SUV driver and then put a second round through the victim's rear window. All right. U.S. Army Sergeant who shot Austin protester Garrett Foster posted tweets about retaliating against demonstrators. One dead amid a gunfire at dueling downtown Denver rallies. One person has died, and another man who 9 News confirmed was a private security guard contracted by them is now in custody after shooting during dueling protests Saturday in downtown Denver. The incident occurred after a man participating in what was billed a patriot rally sprayed mace at another man. And then the man shot the individual with the handgun near the courtyard. That's a fucking big escalation to go from fucking bear spray to shooting somebody. And they got pictures here, man. So obviously that guy right there, he has the mace, and he's getting into a confrontation with that. Guys, this guy's trying to split him up. That's not the dude that shoots him. We go over here. That's the guy that shoots him. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if he attacked him first, but obviously we're seeing this guy slap that dude, right? All right. And then in an attempt to distance himself, he sprays the mace, and this guy pulls out his fucking gun and shoots him. Just walk away. Just walk away. Jesus. Just walk away. Let's continue on. Man shot dead in Portland as protesters clash with counter-protesters. A man shot dead in downtown Portland, Oregon on Saturday night as supporters of President Donald Trump and Black Lives Matter protesters clashed, police said. All right. Jessica Dottie Whitaker, what we know about the fatal shooting of the Indianapolis mother. The fatal July 5th shooting of a 24-year-old Jessica Dottie Whitaker in downtown Indianapolis has garnered international attention since her family said the violence was sparked by an utterance of a racial slur and a disagreement over the statement Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. So, doesn't exist, huh? Now, I guess you could say those events took place years ago. Now, this is no longer the atmosphere in America currently. Well, you're wrong. Political factions have been clashing, but since the early 2000s, we have been subjugated to a 24-hour news cycle. You know, that makes news from a month ago appear like it happened decades ago. So let's refresh the memory here, huh? Protests are staged in front of the Supreme Court judges' homes in an attempt to sway the judge's decision on the overturning of Roe after the SCOTUS leak. This is illegal, and the Maryland District Attorney does nothing while prominent Democrats encourage and applaud protesters. Roe v. Wade was overturned at the end of spring, sparking protests and unrest across the country and widening the divide between right and left. A man visits Brett Kavanaugh's home and is arrested after being discovered with torture devices. His plan was to kidnap and torture Brett Kavanaugh. Radical groups who protested at the homes of the Supreme Court justices set fire to pregnancy crisis centers. The Justice Department has turned the FBI against the enemies of the liberal left. They raided Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. Steve Bannon was arrested and perp-walked. Within a week, the DOJ issued 40 subpoenas to the members of Trump's inner circle. The FBI seized the phones of Rudy Giuliani, Victoria Tunsing, Michael McDonald, Scott Perry, John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark, Boris Epstein, Mike Roman, and Mike Lindell. Those are 9 of Trump's close associates. Now, and everything I just said has all happened within the last 6 months. You know, and this brings us to the our current month and like last month. President Biden gave a speech demonizing half of America. Now, I did a whole segment on it in my last episode, but YouTube took that down because they said I questioned the 2020 election, which I didn't. But I digress. Joe Biden's speech did not help Americans' current atmosphere. The speech he gave that basically equated conservatives with terrorists has led people seeing fellow Americans as enemies and giving the DOJ open season on conservative speakers and leaders. And here's some headlines. Elderly pro-lifer volunteer in Michigan shot after heated conversation. An elderly pro-life volunteer in Michigan was shot in the shoulder while canvassing a neighborhood to discuss an abortion ballot proposal, according to the Right to Life of Michigan. The victim said that she was shot in the back shoulder while leaving a residence during a heated conversation and that the man who shot her was not part of her conversation. So, that man, which I think that escalated rather quickly, who shot the woman, came out later and said it was an accident. So, he thought that the 83-year-old woman was going to attack his wife with the clipboard she had in her hand. So, preemptively, to stop the 83-year-old woman from attacking his wife, he tried to club the clipboard out of the 83-year-old woman's hand with the gun, and while doing that, he accidentally pulled the trigger. It was an 83-year-old woman. No, I'm sorry, but I think the gun is a little overkill, you know? You could have just gone inside the house and said, "We are calling the cops. Please leave." It was an 83-year-old woman. No, and in my opinion, I don't think it was an accident. I think in a fit of rage that a Trump-supporting pro-lifer had the audacity to come onto his property and argue with his wife about abortion, I believe he shot at the lady, luckily not killing her. Let's get on to another article. Pennsylvania pro-life activist arrested by FBI, charged with assaulting clinic escorts. Go down here. A Catholic pro-life activist was arrested Friday at his rural Pennsylvania home and charged with physical assault, physically assaulting a Planned Parenthood clinic escort last year. Mark Hawk, I think that's how you say his last name, 48, of Kinsonville, Pennsylvania, is co-founder of the President of Kingsmen, a Catholic ministry that aims to spiritually mentor young Catholic men. Hawk's wife, Ryan Marie, told Catholic News Agency that a SWAT team of about 25 came to my house in about 15 vehicles and started pounding on our door. They said they were going to break in if he didn't open it. And then they had about 5 guns pointed at my husband, myself, and basically at my kids, she said. A spokesperson with the Philadelphia office of the FBI pushed back against the SWAT team claim, telling Fox News Digital there are inaccurate claims being made regarding the arrest of Mark Hawk. No SWAT team or SWAT operators were involved. And I want you to remember that last statement, okay? I want you to remember that. Because I don't know what kind of games they're trying to play here. But if we give a look at this, right, we can clearly see FBI right there. We can clearly see FBI right there. But if we look at the man holding the green folder, I don't know. But to me, that looks like a T, right? I mean, if we look at this eye right here and that eye right there, that's clearly a fucking T. They said the FBI, the SWAT team wasn't involved. You know? And also, why do you need that many people there? It could have just been one officer. You know? And if we look in the back here, we got 1 car, 2 car, 3 car, 4 car, 5 cars. If they were rolling 4 deep in those SUVs, that would be about 20 people there. So that kind of corroborates her story saying that there was at least 25 people there. Jesus, dude. I don't know what the fuck. I don't know what kind of games they're trying to play, dude. Jesus. So they are arresting Mark Hawk for a charge that was thrown out of the district court in Philadelphia a year ago. And the reason it was thrown out was because a man was harassing Mark Hawk's son at a Planned Parenthood, and Mark stepped in and pushed the man back to create distance between him and his son, and the man fell over and claimed Mark attacked him. So, I don't know. And then now Merrick Garland obviously is stepping in an attempt to recharge Mark Hawk, and the charges were dismissed a year ago, so I don't understand. No. In my opinion, this seems to be Merrick Garland attempting to make a statement about where the FBI stands on people who oppose abortion. You know, he's coming in saying, if you oppose abortion, this is what's going to happen to you. Don't speak out. Be silent. That's what they're saying. We will come and charge you if you don't like abortion. Or if you have differing opinions than us on abortion. That's what they're telling you with that. It's like fucking. Anyways, and let's get into this last one, and this is the one that really upsets me that's happened so far this last month. Driver admitted to fatally striking teen at North Dakota street dance after political dispute. According to court papers, it was not an accident, but apparently a political motivated attack. The fatal vehicle pedestrian incident happened early Sunday morning, September 18th in McHenry, North Dakota, about 120 miles north of Fargo and 54 miles north of Jamestown. Prosecutors alleged moments before he was killed, 18-year-old Kyler Ellingson called his mom to come rescue him because 41-year-old Shannon Brandon was chasing him in the city of McHenry, where the street dance had just wrapped up. By the time she could get there, her son was dead. Brandon was officially charged Monday with vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of a deadly accident. He was the one who called 911 to report the crash, said North Dakota Highway Patrol Captain Brian Newland. Court papers show Brandon called 911 around 2:30 a.m. Sunday and told 911 dispatcher that he had just hit Ellingson, claiming that the teen was part of a Republican extremist group and was calling people to come get Brandon after a political argument. And so this guy, he was driving a car. That kid was on foot. If he felt threatened by that kid, why didn't he just drive away? That makes no fucking sense. Just drive away. Jesus, dude. Ellingson's mom told police her son called her just before the crash, asking if she knew Brandon, which she does. She does not believe her son knew him. We are still trying to determine what exactly transpired at the time of the crash, prior to that as well, explained Newen. Police say Brandon was drunk when he hit and killed Ellingson with the SUV in an alleyway. Jesus, dude. We do not know of any witnesses. We are still making attempts to interview potential witnesses from the street dance, people that were present prior to the crash happening, Newen said. A judge ordered Brandon held on $50,000, which he objected, saying he is not a flight risk. I have a job, a life, and a house and things I don't want to see go by the wayside. Family that are very important to me, Brandon told the judge. Can you believe that shit? He admitted to running that kid. There is evidence to show that he killed that kid. And he thinks he should be out in the world to continue his life while he goes through this court hearing. What about that kid's life? What about his life? He doesn't have a life anymore. He's dead. He was fucking drunk. He committed vehicular homicide because he thought the kid was part of a Republican extremist group. That man should be rotting in jail till he gets sentenced. Now, and if Bill Burr wants to pompously tell people that they are idiots for thinking America is divided because people aren't fighting in the streets, it doesn't exist. Yeah, tell me about my country. He can go fuck himself. What would you call that? A man killed a kid because he thought the kid was part of a Republican extremist group. When the kid was calling his mom for help, the drunk cultist thought he was calling others from his group to come attack him. So he ran the kid over. The fuck's that? That's a political killing. Now, and the worst part about this story is how infected our judicial system is with the liberal agenda. They let him post bond, even though he admitted to killing the kid. The reason you get granted bond is because you are innocent until proven guilty. And you should not be behind bars until you are proven guilty of your crime. He admitted to it. There's evidence to show that he ran that kid over. Now, Kyle Rittenhouse was not able to post bond for 2 months because there was video evidence showing that he committed the crimes he was being charged of. This man admits to running over that teen and is allowed to post bond days later. Get the fuck out of here. No, and if this was the other way around and the kid was a Democrat and was killed by a man who thought he was part of Antifa, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, and the Washington Post would be covering this nonstop. And that man would be sitting in jail, and President Biden would have flown to North Dakota and gave a speech about Republican extremists. You know? It's fucking insane, man. It's insane. It fucking makes me mad. It does. You know, and I don't know if the Civil War is on the horizon, but with everything that has happened within the last 6 months and how fast political strife has escalated, something is going to happen. That's just the start of it right there. You know? So let's circle back here. My hypothesis I made at the beginning of this segment, which was the signs of a collapsing civilization is a polarized culture, and the ultimate end of a civilization is a polarized culture that is introduced to an existential threat. So what then is the existential threat? Is it white supremacy? Is it the MAGA Republicans? Is it MS-13? No, or is it the ever-expanding possibility of World War III? And to the World War III option, it's a yes and no. You see, World War III would be the reveal of the bigger picture that can't be redrawn. Our existential threat is not Russia, North Korea, or Iran. China is our current existential threat, as well as NATO's. And it's not because of its increasing army, nor is it because of its control of the production of semiconductors. It is China's looming presence within American industry and culture and infrastructure. China is partners with Disney and owns a good portion of Disney stock. So they own so much Disney stock, Disney needed to get China's approval for the acquisition of 21st Century Fox. Disney gets China's approval for Fox acquisition. China has approved Walt Disney's $71.3 billion takeover of large parts of 21st Century Fox. Jesus, dude. Jesus. So that means that Disney not only owns Fox, but China as well. And that means that China owns these companies because, no, Disney owns these companies. Every company Disney owns a map of Disney's worldwide assets. Let's go down here. What company does Disney own? ABC, ESPN, Touchstone Pictures, Marvel, Lucasfilms, A&E, The History Channel, Lifetime, Pixar, Hollywood Records, Vice Media, Core Publishing. China owns those companies. China co-owns companies that help dictate our culture. They can affect what Americans see in their movies, what kind of news can be broadcasted, and have influence over our athletes because of the connections they have to our athletic organizations. Now, and if you don't believe me, let's take a look back at 2019 when the Hong Kong protests were happening. Chinese angry over Hong Kong ensnared 3 big U.S. businesses this week, and critics say they bent the knee to Beijing, and they did. Apple took down an app that allowed Hong Kong protesters to track the movement of police after criticism from Chinese state media. U.S.-based video game company Activision Blizzard suspended a gamer who wore a mask and goggles and appeared to shout a slogan often associated with Hong Kong protesters. Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey sent a tweet on Sunday in support of a pro-democracy protest in Hong Kong. The post was quickly deleted, but the damage had been done. The NBA then put out a statement which said it recognized that Morey's views had offended so many of our friends and fans in China, which is regrettable. Fuck, they fucking bent the knees. Might as well just suck their dick. Those last two I just mentioned should scare the fuck out of you because that directly affected free speech of 2 American citizens. Insane. And let's not forget to mention TikTok. That's a culture bombing app in and of itself. China can directly control the content that our young generation consumes. Demoralize the civilization's culture and then colonize. So, there is this game called Civilization. I've talked about it before. And in this game, you can win by dominating another civilization with your culture. And you do this by introducing your culture to them or building a colony close to the enemy civ. If you are to build a colony near the enemy civ, after a certain number of turns, because your culture is a dominant force against their culture, land that was once their territory now becomes land that you can annex and colonize yourself. And then you start building a military base on that newly colonized land. Now, there is 2 ways you can go about this. If the civ you are encroaching on does not have a strong culture, you can simply culture bomb the fuck out of them until cities within their civilization rebel and become part of your civilization. Or you build a strong army and start annexing cities one by one, fortifying them with units until all that's left is the capital. And then you do one big siege with your bloated army and then poof, that civilization is gone and all that remains is your civ. Now, if you're saying, well, that's a game, we would never let any foreign nation colonize any of our surrounding territories, we would be stupid to do that. Well, to you, I'll say wrong. China is buying up American farms. Washington wants to crack down, and this directly affects me because this is where I live. The push to drain China's influence from the U.S. economy has reached America's farm country as congressional lawmakers from both parties are looking at measures to crack down on foreign purchases of prime agricultural real estate. House lawmakers recently advanced legislation to that effect, warning that China's presence in American food system poses a national security risk. Yeah, no shit. And key Senate lawmakers have already shown interest in efforts to keep American farms in American hands, as we should. I can't believe they're buying up fucking our farmland, dude. You know? At what point in American history would we let any foreign nation own our agricultural land? It's un-American, man. But with the weakened culture, American interests are no longer a priority. You know, if they have the money, I'm selling the land. I don't care if it's the Chinese government. I wouldn't want to seem racist. You know? It's insane, man. You know, and what's even more insane is this is happening. China has opened police station in US and Canada to monitor Chinese citizens. China has opened dozens of overseas police service stations around the globe to monitor its citizens living abroad, including one location in New York City and 3 in Toronto. Quote, these operations eschew official bilateral police and judicial cooperation and violate the international rule of law and may violate the territorial integrity in third countries involved in setting up a parallel policing mechanism using illegal methods. Jesus, that was a lot of words I don't know how to pronounce. Hopefully I pronounced them right. Reads of reports by Safeguard Defense, a human rights watchdog released earlier this month. The report, titled 110 Overseas Chinese Transitional Policing Gone Wild, details China's extensive effort to combat fraud by its citizens living overseas, in part by opening several police stations on 5 continents that have assisted Chinese authorities in carrying out policing operations on foreign soil. Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus. Well, there's our colonization and fortification right there. You know, now I'm not saying we shouldn't give Chinese citizens visas to study and work in the United States, because that is a great way to indoctrinate them into American culture before they become citizens. But I do have a problem, and everyone else in America should as well, with a parallel policing force in America, which is basically there to make sure Chinese citizens don't get Americanized or Westernized, but depending on where you're at. That right there is the existential threat that we need to get in check. Now, we better hope we can sort out our cultural issues and put an end to China's occupation of America and Western societies before World War III breaks out. Every day we seem to get closer to it. And if World War III breaks out, do you think China will give up that territory we gave them? No. Those are fortifications with the military presence disguised as a police force. There are 4 of them here, and I say 4 because Toronto might as well be part of us. That's right next to Buffalo, New York, and Detroit, Michigan. So, to end this out, I'm not sure if a civil war will break out. Perhaps we're already in the grip of a civil war. Perhaps the second civil war will be known as the Culture War, which has been going on since 2016. A 5th generational war fought through online debates and memes with small skirmishes in the streets and political pundits steering the fight. Maybe. Hopefully, that's what's happening. Because if that's the case, conservatives are winning. American values are winning. Woke liberalism is slowly crawling back into the hole from which it came from. And once that happens, we can then begin to focus on the real existential threats to our American culture. So we can stay on the mantle of the greatest nation that ever lived. And that ends the big lead.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.